guys, what is going on? Roger says hi. So I've been doing some videos on Australia. I just did the Everything Australia part 1 and 2, learn a little bit about the history of Australia. And man, was there a lot of information in those videos, or in that video. It was one video split into two, but I learned a ton, but I feel like there's a lot I still don't know. What my primary interest though right now is more of the geography stuff. Um, that video kind of raised some questions for me with some of the geography. I've always just kind of been like, Australia in general is like a bit of a mystery to me, but the geography is also a mystery. But I feel like there are some similarities with the US, particularly like the western US and stuff, but I don't really know. I've just seen like pictures of like deserty red rocks, and it makes me think of our deserty red rocks here in the US, and just like the big wide open spaces. The size of Australia is very similar to that of the United States. I know a lot of you guys said that the actual size of it is a little bit bigger than the contiguous 48 states, which I did know about that. But when you add Alaska and Hawaii, the U.S. is actually bigger. But that's still, it's huge, because I know I've traveled across the United States before. I know how big it is, and so I have a very, very good sense of how big Australia is as well. So I'm really excited. What we're going to do today is we're going to get into the geography of Australia. I'm going to just start with the most obvious place to start, which is Geography Now. Australia. I had a couple of people mention that I should do this one anyway. So I don't really know what it's going to entail, but I think it should be fun. I've done a couple of his videos in the past. I think one on, maybe I've only done one. I think I did his on India. But it was really good. I really enjoyed it, so I'm hoping that this one's going to be good as well. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Alright everybody, let's just all get it off of our chests. Koalas and kangaroos, boomerangs, didgeridoos, Sydney, Melbourne, Uluru, crocodiles, cockatoos, everything that will kill you, shrimp on Barbies, that's not true, that Vegemite stuff that tastes like poo, coral reefs and platypuses, platypi, what's the plural of platypus? Alright, now let's actually learn about the freaking country.
It's time to learn geography.
Now! Hey everybody, I'm your host Paul Barbato. Today's gonna be Australia. You know the drill, let's dissect the flag. The Australian flag has a blue field with a Union Jack on the upper hoist corner to represent that it was a former colony and a current Commonwealth of the United Kingdom, with a large star under it representing the Commonwealth, and the 5 stars on the right, the Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon Crucis, to the right representing the Southern Cross constellation. Alright, that was fun. Now let's discuss.
Wait, what? That's an actual constellation? For some reason I thought it was going to represent the different states in Australia. It's a constellation?
And the 5 stars on the right, the Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon Crucis, to the right representing the Southern Cross constellation. Alright.
There are 8 states though, so that wouldn't, right? I think you guys said there are 8 states, so that wouldn't make sense that there's 5 stars. So, alright.
Gamma, Delta, Epsilon Crucis, to the right representing the Southern Cross constellation. Alright, that was fun. Now let's discuss about the borders. Now, obviously, as an island nation, a rather large one, but still an island, Australia doesn't have any borders with any other nations, but that doesn't mean that Australia doesn't have some rather intriguing parameters. The country divides itself up in a rather intriguing way. Like the US, Australia has states, not provinces. There is a difference. 6 of them, and each one kind of has their own little flair and quirks, like Tasmania, known for being courageous.
There's 6 of them. Okay, wait, what?
6 of them, and each one kind of has their own.
Where did I get 8 from? I could have sworn somebody said it was 8 in the comments. Maybe I'm not remembering correctly. Okay, there's 6. Why is the top part not highlighted as a state though? That's weird.
Australia has states, not provinces, there is a difference. 6 of them, and each one kind of has their own little flair and quirks, like Tasmania, known for being crazy. Where things get a little interesting, though, are the territories. Australia has 3 domestic internal territories and 6 overseas territories. Technically 7 if you include the Australian Antarctic territory, even though the Antarctic Treaty kind of bans anybody from claiming Antarctic soil as their own, which we will find out in future episodes that a lot of countries do a wonderful job at ignoring. The 3 internal territories are Northern Territory, Capital Territory, which is basically just the capital city of Canberra and some extra space around it, and the confusing little tyke Jervis Bay Territory. Jervis Bay was bought and developed to give the inland capital Canberra access to the sea, and eventually Jervis Bay split from the capital. However, it's still counted as part of the capital in elections. It's a little confusing, even though it really doesn't have much going for it, except for a small navy base and beaches that it kind of took from other neighboring towns. The most dramatic border area, though, would have to be the middle of Australia. For years, this slab of land didn't exactly quite know how to distinguish itself and has gone through 4 transitions in the past century. First, it was all South Australia, which didn't quite make sense because parts of it touched the northern parts of Australia, so it split into 2, 1 state and 1 territory. Then for 4 years, it became South Australia and 2 territories, the new one being called Central Australian Territory. Then finally it changed its mind and went back to being Northern Territory. Central Australia is kind of like your girlfriend at a restaurant. What do you want? What do you want? It's not that simple! Finally, we reach the overseas territories. Although Australia has over 8,000 islands under its sovereignty, 6 of these islands operate as distinct territories. Some of
What? 8,000 islands? This is gonna sound stupid, but I didn't even know that there were 8,000 islands on the planet Earth. I never even thought about it, actually, but I don't know how many I thought there were. I don't know, a few hundred. I feel so ignorant right now. But 8,000 islands? How? Are there that many around Australia, or are these including islands on other parts of the world? Like, what?
It has over 8,000 islands under its sovereignty. 6 of these islands operate as distinct territories, some of which sustain themselves with permanent populations. They are Ashmore and Cartier, the Cocos or Keelings Islands, Coral Sea Islands, the Heard and McDonald Islands, and the popular holiday spot Norfolk Island, and the pleasant Christmas Island that gets attacked by huge coconut crabs every year. Finally, Australia is home to arguably the most micronations in the world. Places like the Principality of Wye, Rainbow Creek, the Empire of Atlantium, and more. These nations were developed by either small groups of people or a single person because they were doing things like protesting taxes and wanted to claim autonomy, or they were just kind of bored and decided to amuse themselves. But still, hey, they tried. All right, now let's talk about the landscape, shall we?
This is part I want to learn more about right now.
Not all of Australia is a desert, okay? Only about 35%. Okay, so besides Antarctica, Australia is the driest continent on the planet, which explains why, yes, 85% of the population lives along the edges of the country.
How is this brown part only 35%? I thought that entire part was desert, basically. That looks like a huge part of the country. Looks like way more than 35%, but maybe not all of it's technically classified as a desert or something.
The planet, which explains why, yes, 85% of the population lives along the edges of the country within 50 kilometers of the coast. Nonetheless, a lot of places, specifically around the coasts, actually have very temperate and even tropical landscapes. By the north, you find tropical zones and wetlands and rainforests. By the far edges on the east and west, you can find subtropical zones with lighter forests and plains. A little bit inland, close to the interior, you find grasslands and flat stretches of semi-arid terrain. In the southeast by Sydney, you find temperate, cooler, arid land with semi-tropical, yet slightly dry areas with an abundance of trees and plants. Then of course you have Tasmania, which is on a completely different level of green. Then we reach the deep interior where we hit the great deserts like the Great Victoria and the Great Sandy Deserts. This area is famously known as the Outback. The Outback is essentially the area of Australia with long open stretches of red and orange desert that lays out beyond the horizon with few sparse.
This looks very similar to the U.S. West. This is the part that makes me compare the two right here. It's a little docky.
Australia with long open stretches of red and orange desert that lays out beyond the horizon with few sparse populations of people that can be found anywhere. It has a dry, rocky, rugged terrain that everybody assumes is teeming with a variety of poisonous insects and reptiles, and, well, I mean, it kind of is, but still, there's more to
Look
it
at
than
that
just that.
spider!
Don't forget Lake Hillier, that strange lake that is mysteriously
Oh.
naturally pink for some strange reason that...
Huh. I have never seen a pink lake before. And it's got like white, is that like white sand around it or what? For some strange reason. Come on, they know why it's pink. I wish they'd tell me why in this. That'd be interesting.
Just that. Oh, and don't forget Lake Hillier, that strange lake that is mysteriously naturally pink for some strange reason that baffles scientists. Now, if there's one thing that
Whoa, really? They don't know? That seems odd to me that they don't know why it's pink. Really? Huh.
Is mysteriously naturally pink for some strange reason that baffles scientists. Now, if there's one thing that really epitomizes Australia, it would have to be its world-renowned beaches and coasts. People flock from all over the world just to enjoy the beautiful, pristine atmosphere of a real, authentic Australian beach. Just remember to put on your sunscreen, though. Australians actually kind of have a joke where they can tell who the ignorant tourists are. It's usually...
I didn't really associate Australia with beaches for some reason. When I think of Australia, I think of the outback, which is so, like, one-dimensional. I know. But yeah, of course it would have beaches. Probably really good ones. Isn't surfing like a big deal there too? I knew that. I don't know why I didn't think about the beaches. Scarlett is in here and she's going a little crazy right now. What are you doing? Okay. Alright. Why does this person have like a looks like one of those devices that you know, law enforcement puts around. It's like an ankle tracker. What the heck is that?
Just remember to put on your sunscreen, though. Australians actually kind of have a joke where they can tell who the ignorant tourists are. It's usually the ones who think they'll be totally fine sitting out in the sun for more than 20 minutes. Skin cancer rates are actually exceptionally high in Australia, and the population has acknowledged the precautions that they need to take. Now, we all know that Australia is home to some of the most unique and curiously distinct animal species in the world not found anywhere else. However, Australia is also known as the home of many feral species. Australia has over 50 invasive species that were brought over to the land from areas mostly in Europe, and over the course of nearly 1.5 centuries have bred and spread like wildfire all over the country.
Yeah, I had you guys tell me that camels were one of those, I think.
Like the European rabbit, red fox, water buffaloes, goats, pigs, even camels, and worst of all, the famous cane toad. They've all gone wild and have cost the Australian government billions of dollars in environmental damages and maintenance. Yeah, I don't really know how to transition into the demographics from this part, so here's demographics. Today, Australia has a population of about 23 million people. Now, to many outsiders, Australia is kind of known as the place where the British sent their prisoners. First of all, that's rude. Second of all, that's only, like, kind of half true. Yes, during the early years of Australia's colonization from the UK, droves of convicts were sent to penal colonies in Botany Bay, which is now in present-day Sydney. Over 165,000 convicts, about 25,000 of which were women, were sent over the course of 80 years. Although the British weren't the first ones to discover Australia, it was actually the Dutch. As they came, they named the land New Holland and the adjacent island next door New Zealand after the province of Zeeland in the Netherlands. However,
I didn't know the Dutch named New Zealand. Interesting. New Zealand, I'm going to be doing some stuff on you too. Like, don't think that I've forgotten about you as well. So I'm really intrigued by New Zealand also. I'm also really intrigued by the Dutch. I think I would like to learn more about that. I know nothing about the Dutch and their explorations and stuff. Again, it's like, I know I studied it in school at some point, like, it feels like a lifetime ago now. I don't really remember it. So, yeah, I would like to get into the Dutch as well and their explorations. And there's the Dutch East India Company and stuff like that, which I thought that there was only... I thought the East India Company was just British for whatever reason, but I guess the Dutch had it too. Or so, I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Soon discovered the Dutch were really good at discovering places, but kind of not so good at colonizing and maintaining those places for themselves. However, most of Australia's population came from natural colonization from British non-convict nationals. Some would argue that Australia was kind of like the UK's version of Operation Backup Plan in case of America goes crazy. After the American Revolution, the UK tried to compensate for lost colonies by re-establishing new ones, and Australia was hot on the list. About 85% of the population is European. Asians make up the next largest minority of about 12%, mostly coming from China and India and other Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam and the Philippines. By the way, yes, Australia does have black people, not many, but before the Federation began, Africans, mostly from sub-Saharan countries like South Africa, Mauritius, Zimbabwe, and Sudan, have historically resided in Australia. It wasn't until the 60s when African assistance programs allowed many Africans to study and eventually move to Australia. Today, they make up about 1% of the population. One demographic of people that commonly gets overlooked, though, would have to be the native Australians, commonly known as the Aborigines, which make up about 3% of the population. Aborigines are a very unique and distinct people group that come from hundreds of different tribes, each with their own language and dialect, spread throughout the north, south, and central regions. Today,
So are Aborigines just strictly Australia? For some reason, I've, of course, heard the term a lot referenced, but for some reason I didn't really know exactly where they came from. So is it just Australia then, where they're known? They're not in Africa. They're not in some of these other islands out in the Pacific or whatever. It's just Australia that the Aborigines are from, and that's just the term used for Native Australians, kind of like the I guess Indians, Native Americans here, which I think Indians is back in fashion now to call them. I don't know. It changes like every decade.
Aboriginal rights are a huge hot-button topic in Australian legislation, and about 22% of the land of northern Australia is Aboriginal-owned. In 2013, Aboriginal groups actually banded together and decided to kind of make their own little state called the Murrawarri Republic, independent from Australia. The Australian government, though, doesn't really recognize this claim. It just kind of brushes it off with a meh, as long as you don't cause a civil war attitude. Well, as you can see, a lot of people have come to live in Australia, but now let's see how Australia interacts with the rest of the world. Australia is, let's just put it very simply, a very popular country. If this was high school, Australia would be on the top of the social ladder, hands down. Everybody knows something about Australia. When it comes to friends, though, Australia not only goes for the cool kids, but also the strategic ones. Of course, Australia gets along with many of its Asian neighbor nations, specifically China and India, as large numbers of people from those nations live in Australia, and they do great business with them as well. Australia gets along pretty well with the islands of Oceania, except Fiji. In 2006, Australia refused to back up a military coup that overthrew the government in Fiji, and since then, things have been a little weird between the two countries. In terms of their best friends, though, of course, New Zealand would have to rank in the top level, and they are basically like siblings that share a very similar culture, language, and histories as former colonies, whereas the UK also has a high priority on Australia's entourage, as they make up the largest demographic of people ethnically and as migrants in the country. But finally, we reach the USA. The USA and Australia kind of have a little crush on each other. Australia is
now this picture did Australia a disservice. Look, it's smaller than the US. It should be bigger. Oh. Okay, you get some points taken off geography now for that. Sorry, Australia. I'll apologize for them.
We reach the USA. The USA and Australia kind of have a little crush on each other. Australia is always there to back up the US in times when allies are necessary, and the US, well, I mean, we Americans, we just love Australians. We love their accents, we love their culture, we love their accents, we love their spunky Australian attitude, and we love their sexy, sexy accents. Almost any Australian that comes to the US is immediately loved and welcome, even if they are slightly sociopathic. One sentence with that accent and we are smitten. We love you, Australia. In conclusion, Australia is just, everybody loves Australia. Stay tuned, Austria is coming up next.
Okay, well, pretty good video. I did learn a few things in there. I learned that Australia has 6 states. That's still like blowing my mind. I'm sure he's right, I just want to like confirm it though. Like how many Wikipedia. How many 6 states? Okay, I just was not remembering the comment correctly. I'm sure they said 6 states. yeah, so I learned about the states. I learned that there are territories in addition to the states, which I didn't know about. I learned that they basically have sovereignty over 8,000 islands. Like, that's insane to me. It makes me wonder how many the US has sovereignty over. Like, I feel like it's not that many. I don't know though. Like, I don't know anything about that. Oh man, what else? Yeah, he didn't really go too far into the landscape of Australia, but that picture that they showed with the big red rock, that is the one that sticks in my head, only because I saw Robert Irwin with his family posed in front of it like they were going on a holiday or something, and they were out in the outback, I guess, like exploring or something like that. Which, by the way, I love the Irwin family. I love Robert Irwin, and just like how he's picked up the mantle of what his dad did and all of that stuff. Of course, they had these Animal Planet shows and all of that were huge, which Americans love that stuff. We love the Irwin family over here, and I think they are kind of like the ambassadors of Australia for a lot of people, and they couldn't be better ambassadors. I think they're really great people, and it's fun to watch them try to not get eaten by alligators. But anyway, yeah, it was good video. Of course, we're going to expand on this at some point. The demographics are also interesting. For me, it's kind of strange to not have that many black people, because we have a pretty much higher population than that over here in the US for obvious reasons, I guess. So that's a little different, but yeah, so really informative video. I will be doing more in-depth stuff down the road. I did write down some of your suggestions from the Everything Australia video, so look forward to doing more Australia, more New Zealand as well, getting into you. And make sure, guys, to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And if you haven't done that yet, and Scarlett's biting her tail right now. What are you doing? You want to say hi to everybody? Come here. Yeah. Come here. Come on. There you go. Say hi. Yeah. Scarlett is super energetic today. I don't know what's gotten into her. I don't know if it's the heat or what, but she is like, pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. All day today. All day. It's actually dinner time, and I have to go to the store and get some more food for her. But yes. Yes. You're a good girl. Yes. Okay, guys. Like and subscribe. Check out the links to my social media in the pinned comment, Discord, Patreon, all of that stuff is there. Pinned comment description of this video. And oh, yes, you're being a good girl. And Scarlett, Roger, and I, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time. Yes. Oh my goodness.